what should we do for introduction?
We're talking about.
I don't know. I mean, we've got to have a really good introduction because we're talking about great character introductions. So it can't be something boring like just us talking back and forth.
Well, you could say introducing Leo because the cat's right next to me meowing or purring really loudly.
Introducing Leo. Brr, 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 brr. Yeah, you could put in air horns. I know I gave you the sound effect, but mine isn't very good. So
Yeah, I feel like that'd be easy enough.
there you go. Wait a second. Are you recording?
I've been recording for a while. I always record early just so I don't forget because it's easy enough. And then when I'm editing, I just find where we start and I just cut everything before it.
That was part of the bit, Brian.
Oh, it was.
This is the most meta. This is the most meta introduction that we've ever done. We don't even know when
we were just talking about how we started. Sorry, you didn't tell me you were starting.
That is the introduction. Is us just talking about how we're starting.
Isn't all right. Great? That is great. Go with it. We're already on. We have started.
Well, man, if this is your first episode, we always are much more prepared than this. I just wanted to do something fun. Welcome to TV Guys. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian. And actually, it just seems like we're more prepared than this.
That's true. We're really good at faking it. And
because we often ramble about what we're doing, and I usually just cut that out, but not this time.
Not this time. We have got that there. That is like your bonus features. So now you can feel like you're sitting here with us. Maybe next time what we should do for an introduction is we should just like ask questions and then pause, and then you can answer them on your own. And then you can feel like you're part of the podcast with us.
And we can guess what your answers were. And then if they're right, you can be like, whoa, they heard me?
Yeah. And if you didn't say the right thing that we wanted you to say, then you have to start over again and say it right so that you finally get it together.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're driving. You got to back up the podcast.
Do it. Yeah. Come on. Serious. All right. Well, hey, we are talking about, as I said in our fake introduction or whatever we're calling it, we are talking about the best character introductions. So TV shows, especially when you've got like this guy from the beginning, TV shows, they have this hard talent of like, how do we introduce this person? So sometimes they'll have someone like, we're just going to introduce it by throwing Jack and just focusing on his eye. And then boom, he's in a jungle by himself. And that's how we introduce Jack Shephard and all of Lost.
Yeah.
Or you have someone who just pops up at the end of the episode and be like, by the way, I'm a main character. So we're going to talk about who did it the best or who popped in the middle of a season or in later seasons. And we introduce them like they were part of the show the whole time.
But before we talk about character introductions, we have to talk about a departure. So last week we talked about Loki. And I know some of our listeners don't watch the Marvel shows because they're bad people. And so to give a little context, part of the show Loki was about the TVA, basically people who were in different timelines. And when they find out different variants or alternate versions of people, they get pruned and like sent into the eternal void. Well, I have proof that is real because I have an audio clip of an alternate version of Matt getting pruned out of existence.
This is terrible. I hate this already.
All right, so here's the live audio of alternate Matt getting pruned out of existence.
Well, I recognize that.
Yeah, from when you were pruned.
Yeah, no, I know. See,
my nipples are so sore. I'm out of breath. Oh my goodness. Willard.
See, that was by a TVA agent named Willard who prunes by squeezing your nipples as hard as he can. So
as soon as I got the idea to do that, I was like, I can't not do this.
This is the weirdest episode ever. You guys who came here for like actual content, you're like, what is happening right now? This is the content you signed on for. This is TV Guys. You're welcome.
Well, who wouldn't want to hear Matt scream like a girl?
I don't know. Hey, this is a good segue though, talking about alternate realities and alternate people. So when we're talking character introductions, like there's a lot of character introductions that are actually just alternate versions of characters that I left off. Like for instance, like there's some cheating you can do, like Future Hero from Heroes when they introduced him. Like that's in a way it's another character, but at the same time it's the same character we know. Or when you're not a Star Trek fan, but there is an episode of Star Trek Next Generation where the Captain Picard gets kidnapped by this race called the Borg, and the Borg turn humans into like robots. It's almost like a zombie sort of thing, but they're like robotic and they all share this hive mind. And so like there are these huge bad guys of Star Trek and one of the best races that they have. And a cliffhanger episode, Captain Picard gets kidnapped by the Borg and he gets assimilated into the Borg. And so Locutus is the name that he ends up going by. And I'm like, that could technically work, but that's a little cheating. So I left those off. So I just wanted to highlight them before getting into like actual character introductions.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of one. It's actually from one of the shows that I have, but if it's a different character, it would also kind of be cheating, but I could also see you having it. So we'll talk about that at the end, maybe.
So what's your number 3 then for top introductions?
My number 3 is one that you could have. It's a show that we both watch, Scrubs. I'm talking about
Scrubs.
I'm talking about the introduction of the janitor.
I actually had thought about that because that's a really good introduction because it sets the dynamic for the rest of the series.
Exactly. It's just the one little thing. He's just working on the door and JD is just like, oh, maybe a penny stuck in there. Why a penny? Did you stick a penny in there? If I find a penny in there, you're going down. And at the end, there was a penny. And of course, he just happened to say that. That just sets off this janitor hates JD. That's the only reason for like the whole 9 years. And he basically devotes his life to torturing this one doctor.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're a fan of Scrubs at all, you know most likely the story of Janitor in season 1, that the idea was the janitor was supposed to only be a character in JD's head. Mm-hmm. And so it was going to be like this tormenting him as he was like getting accustomed to being a resident at hospital or a doctor at the hospital there. And so it was a really good idea. And they're like, well, okay, if we're going to get more seasons than 1, we'll turn him into a full-fledged character that actually exists. But if not, we're just going to do this. And so they reused that idea later with Brandon Fraser's character of this character is in your head. So they still toyed with it. But like that is really cool how they started that idea and they had the freedom to go either way with it, and it would have worked either way.
And it shows how even if you have an idea that sounds cool at the beginning, you don't have to stick with it if it makes your show bad. I'm talking to you, writers of How I Met Your Mother. Just because you had the idea that Ted ends with Robin doesn't mean you have to go with it.
They're like, but we already shot the footage. So what? It's just like, and obviously they only shot the footage of the kids. The kids were the only one they shot the footage of. And so like, well, whatever. You just scrap a couple images of these kids and put it as extras on DVD. Like, this is what our alternate ending was.
Also, they could have made, if they filmed a different ending, I know the kids would be 9 years older, which is why they filmed it earlier. You could make a joke out of it. You could be like, Dad, we've been sitting here listening to this story for so long, we've already aged 10 years. Like, they could have made a joke about it. But no, they didn't.
Yeah. I think How I Met Your Mother is the kind of show that you could make that joke. I think
exactly.
They could do it.
Yeah.
But that I don't have an How I Met Your Mother character on my list. However, I do have. Okay, so my number 3 is a character everyone hates, but they had a really good introduction. They had a great first episode, and so that character is from The Office, and it's Robert California. His first episode when they're interviewing him was actually really good. I really liked the dynamic that he had because in those scenes, he only had like 2 or 3 scenes in that first episode that he was in, and he clearly dominated the room, but he didn't do it in like a way like that Dwight tries to dominate the room or that Michael dominates the room or things like that. He was able to do it in this way of like, you know that I'm the most powerful man in this room right now. And like he just projected that and oozed it. And it was, you know, we talked about this character when we did our Office character rankings, that James Spader is a really good actor. And this was the best that we got to see of him. And he actually had a couple of good moments in the early part of the next season. I know that's I hate Robert California. I know that's almost blasphemy to say, but he actually peaked to me in that Halloween episode, and then everything after that was downhill. Because if you remember that Halloween episode, I know I'm getting off on the character introduction, but the Halloween episode, he has that long story about like all the fears of everyone.
Yeah.
And then to turn it on its head at the end, and then his little talking head, he's like, how dare we let fear control us? How dare we let it have a say in our life? I'm like, Robert California is spitting truth here. The rest of his other stuff from then on out sucked. But up until that point, I liked him as a character. So first episode was good.
Yeah, in the beginning, he said he didn't have to be all yelling and screaming to be powerful. It's kind of like different shades of another one of his characters, Ultron. Remember that in Age of Ultron, when he blows up the party, he just kind of shows up casually, like, oh yeah, I had to kill that other guy. That's kind of like the shades of Robert California a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, the parts of Ultron that I didn't like were when he like lost his temper, like when he cut off Claw's arm and stuff. Because like I really like that quiet control. And James Spader does that super well.
Yeah. All right. So my number 2 is a show that Matt hasn't seen much of. This is the one I sent you. So normally we try to keep these secret, but like I need Matt to have seen this intro because it's such a crazy introduction. It's the IT Crowd. And in season 2, the beginning of season 2, the boss dies because it turns out the boss is going to be caught by the police for doing a bunch of shady stuff with the pension fund. He opens up, it's kind of a funny scene where the original boss just casually opens up a window and jumps out to his death. And then it cuts to they're at his funeral, and they mention, oh yeah, normally it would be his son who would be given the eulogy, but he was lost at sea, and all of a sudden the back door opens up, and it's his son, Douglas, played by Matt Berry, who then becomes a series regular for the rest of the show. Comes up, he has this awesome like arm movement. He looks up, Father, and he runs up to the front, and you just get the sense of who this guy is. He's an idiot. He's a rich idiot control freak who's also a bit of what do you call Todd Packer-esque sex predator. It's kind of like if
well, I'm sold.
Because his character is kind of hit and miss. He has some really funny moments, but for the most part, he's not my favorite because his character is basically if Todd Packer had Michael Scott's job.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
To give you some context as well, the very first scene that we see him in is at that funeral, and he like runs up and trips at the very end, trips and knocks over the casket. Yeah. And then as he's righting himself, he gets in a slap fight with a priest at the funeral. And it's not like a 5 second, like it goes on for like 20 seconds. They keep slapping each other. And then finally he like enough, you know. And then
he turns and looks at Jen and starts hitting on Jen at his dad's funeral.
Yeah. and like in the middle of it, like when Jen comes in the middle of like all the crazy that's happening, it's like, did I miss anything? Oh, they just started the eulogy. Like, no, you missed a lot.
Yeah. And that's that dry sense of humor. Like that's the kind of humor that I go to the IT Crowd from, like from Moss and Roy. Like that's the heart of it. But Douglas is just, he has, and I think I mentioned this before, he has another moment where he's at his dad's desk and he finds a loaded gun in his desk. And it's a note from his dad, and it's saying, I always planned on using this gun to kill myself, but as you know, I ended up killing myself by jumping out of a window. Like he pre-planning all this, and he takes the gun and says, I wonder if this is loaded. It sticks it in his mouth and shoots 6 times. Nope, it's not loaded. And it's just,
yeah. The Brits, they go that extra mile in their syndicated.
And even then, if you look at the scene on YouTube, the first comment is literally someone saying best character introduction of all time.
Yeah, I'm sure that intro, like when you're talking about that scene, that they'll put that as like, oh, this is the best character. That's the title of the video.
And for those of you who watch Community all the way to the end, he's the one in the last season who was the grifting teacher as well. Yeah. But kind of just sets the tone for how the show is going to be. Now the IT Crowd gang is going to have to deal with this guy as their boss.
I did like him as the grifter in that episode. That episode was pretty good. If you've seen The Sting, it's a parody of that movie in the 70s, which is it's a weird deep dive to go. Like The Sting, it's a good movie and it won an Oscar. It won for like Best Picture, but that is like an old movie. That's like 70, 71, somewhere in there. So the fact community is like, yeah, let's do this. Or like they did Dinner with Andre, which is another old movie. And like, why did of all the things to parody, why are you picking these?
But what I like about those things is they're still funny even if you haven't seen the original material.
Yeah. I hadn't seen The Sting before the first time I saw the episode, but I saw it afterwards.
Yeah. This isn't an episode about community themed episodes, which we already did that episode.
We did. So we'll move on to an episode. This is a show that we have not. I don't think we brought up yet. I don't think we brought this show up yet, and we haven't talked much about it. Have you ever watched The West Wing?
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
So the pilot episode has a tremendous character introduction. And again, it goes back to that idea with Scrubs, where they had an idea for this character. And because of like how that character played it, they changed it halfway through. So the whole episode, it starts off where you find out that the president was in some sort of accident with his bike. And so they're all kind of trying to cover that. They're also trying to like downplay it to because the whole show of West Wing, it follows those who work right under the president, like the chief of staff and his staff as well, and the press secretary. I was having a hard time remembering titles, and so there's a couple different characters. Like this is a good ensemble cast. There's a bunch of characters that are having different things that are popping up of like, well, we can't let this get out, or we need to figure out a way around this. And one of the ones that messed up was a character named Josh had something on TV the night before, an interview on TV, and he really went too far with this local Christian leader and what he was saying about him, and to a point that it was offensive, that there's this Christian group that was like, whoa, that was way too far. We can't have you do that. And so like the whole, like, how do I apologize for this? How do I make amends with this group? How do I save face for our president, for the Christian voters, and make sure that we placate to them? And so they invited representatives from the group to the White House to be able to apologize to them. So Josh was in there with his boss, played by Richard Schiff. By the way, Josh is played. This is a great cast. Josh is played by what is his name? I've got it pulled up here. Bradley Whitford. That's right.
Okay.
So both. Yeah, he's really coming to his own recently, like really big roles. But both of those guys are in the room, and these Christian leaders are just being jerks. And they even like make a comment that's almost anti-Semitic about like, his Jewish sense of humor or something like that. They don't outright say it, but that's what they're alluding to. And so Richard Schiff calls him on, is like, that's what they're saying. He's saying that about you. And so like when the whole episode was like, am I going to swallow my pride, or what am I going to do? How am I going to apologize to these people? How am I going to make everything okay? Then the president finally comes in the last like 5 minutes of this episode. And that's the character that we are introduced to that I'm talking about. And that's Martin Sheen's character of Josiah Bartlett, or Jed Bartlett.
Yeah.
And he's the president. He walks in, and he is at first really cordial to these guests, talking to them, and like back and forth. And then he starts to tell this story and starts talking about the Bible and the scripture that he knows. And then he turns it back on these guys who are being rude to his staff and being like, they don't owe you an apology, especially not the way that you're talking to. Now get out of the White House. And it was like he completely took charge, where it was such a great scene to show how he was able to fix a problem. And it was like all these problems that these other characters had throughout the episode, he was able to like fix right away just by being there, by being present in the room. And so the idea of his character was going to be that they weren't even going to have the president be a main character of this show, but because of how, it's Martin Sheen, and he's so good. And they're like, you know what? We can't do it that way. He's not going to be a recurring guest star. We are going to make him a series regular. I don't remember when they did that. I haven't watched all of West Wing, but I do remember that introduction. I was like, that's a really good scene.
From what I've seen of the West Wing, like I can't imagine that show without him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that he morphed the show into really his thing. Is like, it's still an ensemble cast, but he is such an important part of it, not just because he's the president, but because he's a really good actor.
That's the show, and I think I really like the cast. I really like Allison Janney and Chris, Rob Lowe.
Rob Lowe, yeah,
yeah,
really good actors in that show for sure.
So we're on to my number one.
Yep.
All right.
It might be my number one. I'm really anticipating that it's gonna be my number one.
Okay. Does your number one have anything to do with the phrase "make your own kind of music"?
And that was actually going to be my trivia. What song was playing? But yes, this is without a doubt the best character introduction in my of all time. Go ahead and tell us about it, Brian.
So you should make your own kind of music, sing your own special song. I don't know the lyrics,
even if no one else sings along.
Even if nobody else sings along, yes. We're of course talking about the introduction of Henry Ian Cusick playing Desmond David Hume on Lost from seasons 2 through 6. Getting all the details out there.
That's right. And so season 2, when that debuted, season 1 ended off with this huge cliffhanger because it's Lost. Every season's going to end off with a cliffhanger. Yeah. So season 1, they finally open the hatch and they look down into the hatch and Jack and Locke are staring there, and then boom, Lost. You're like, wait, what's in the hatch? You're not going to show us what's in the hatch? And so all these people had this whole summer to be thinking about it and theorizing and talking online, and they get back to season 2 and they have these huge expectations, and they're like, the pilot for season 1 was amazing, so season 2 the writers had all of this pressure to deliver, and then they turn on this stuff and you start seeing this guy in what looks like the 70s, like exercising and just kind of going about this morning routine to the song Make Your Own Kind of Music. And then we find out after a couple minutes, it's like, oh, this guy is in the hatch. Well, this is what's inside it.
It even shifts before that. So first he's going about his day. You can see, it's in some kind of old small apartment. He's working out. He's doing this and that. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, what is he doing? He's getting some kind of medication and injecting himself. Like, this is kind of getting weird. And like you see, you kind of put it together in pieces because there's some kind of explosion going on. And all of a sudden he's grabbing a jumpsuit and opens up a vault full of guns. And then he starts doing this whole apparatus where he's got this telescope and it's hooked up to all these mirrors. And you see the faint image of Jack and Locke at the top of the big shaft. And it's like, oh, that's where this is.
Yeah, the exact moment that we left off of season 1.
Yeah. So I didn't have the experience that you mentioned about having to wait all summer because I caught into Lost a little bit late. So I think I had bought the DVDs at this point. And so all I had to do was like, okay, I got to switch, put in the next DVD and watch. So I got I got the luxury of finding out right away. Were you watching live at that point?
I was. And in fact, I even thought, I was like, wait, am I on the wrong channel? Is this Lost? This can't be Lost, right? This is how they're starting. I don't even know who this is. And so then you're kind of guessing because it's a long-haired guy, like, oh, maybe this is going to be a Sawyer episode.
Yeah, I thought it was Sawyer too, because Sawyer's the only one of the main cast that kind of matches both like skin tone and body type. Because obviously, it can't be Hurley. It's not big, and like it's not it's skin tone couldn't be like Saeed or anything. So like Sawyer's the only one that fits. Yeah. And it's like, okay, and I could see Sawyer living in an old crappy apartment at some point, and so I'm curious how soon people put it together. Like, was it as soon as there was the explosion? Did they realize, oh, that's the explosion at the hatch?
No, for me, when I'm watching it, I didn't realize what was going on until it showed Locke and Jack, and you're like, oh, that's what's doing. The explosion kind of turns that first, like, okay, now there's something heating up. So what's going to happen? What are we watching here? And then we see him.
And it's such an interesting character because Desmond is one of the most fascinating characters of the whole show.
Oh yeah,
because he shows up and then he leaves in season 2, and I think they weren't necessarily planning on bringing him back. Then he comes back in the finale of season 2, and then he's back on the island and he's part of the gang for the rest of the time. But it's so interesting because they set up early on that Desmond is special, like especially when in season 3 we find out that like the hatch imploded and like everything disintegrated to the point where even Desmond's clothes like were incinerated off of him. He's in the jungle naked. Like something special about this guy where that's not going to kill him. And not only that, but he starts to have visions of the future. And like what is going on with this? And I remember later on So at the end of season 4, Desmond, along with the Oceanic Six and Frank, they get off the island. And from that, the last 2 seasons, Desmond's actually not on the show that often. If you look at the last 2 seasons, he's only in a handful of episodes. And I remember
that was like a huge jip. I'm like, I love Desmond. Why are you not having him in more of this?
I know, but you just knew, like, because he was also still a series regular, even though he's only in like a handful of episodes. So like you always knew that he's going to come back and be somewhat involved in this. It was worth the payout for me, I think, because when he finally did come back to the island at the end of season 6, I think everything he did with like being able to reconcile the timelines, that he knew what was going on, and him being able to uncork the island, like, it was really fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Season 3, like I feel like with Desmond, when they brought him back because I think he was going to fulfill some of the stuff that Walt might have originally been intending to fill, and that they realized like they couldn't do it with Walt because of his age and because he was growing in that. They couldn't do it because they also did the thing with Walt, like right away, he's special, but then they almost like kind of dropped that. And instead they put a lot of these special like abilities onto Desmond instead.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only could he see the future in the third one, but he also became the variable and the constant, and had that sort of thing that was going on. In season 4, I really liked that side of it, like his relation with Faraday and all that. And then they brought it back full circle at the end of what he was there to do. So, but it all started with Make Your Own Kind of Music.
And sing your own special song. Yep. And Desmond's episodes across the series, because Lost, we mentioned before, most of the episodes are centric on one specific character. They're some of the best episodes and some of the most unique episodes. I think the weakest of the Desmond episodes was Catch 22, which I just watched a couple of days ago, actually, which is the whole Desmond was a monk episode. Other than that, they're all like edge of your seat. You don't want to miss. To me, it's like, it's a Kate episode, whatever. But if it's a Desmond episode, I got to tune in.
Yeah, because I mean, Desmond had the phone call episode with him and Penny. That was like such a great emotional payout. He had the end of season 2 finale where there's a lot of stuff it revealed, not only about him, but even about the Hatch and some of the history of the island in season 2. Gave some good answers. And then there's the one episode in season 3 that was really cool where it's like he actually got transported back in time.
Yeah.
And it was like, what's going on back here in time? And you got a lot more of his thing. You saw where that picture came from, and you saw how he broke Penny's heart, and then like how he realized that he was out of time and started trying to change things and wasn't able to do it.
Yeah, he runs into Charlie and he's like, wait a minute, I know you.
Yeah, and that was fun. It was like, oh, Charlie, you're in a flashback of someone else's. That's so cool. Mm-hmm. So yeah, as you can tell, guys, I knew that this would be on your list because this was such a good character introduction. I can't think of another character introduction that is even in the same realm as this one. Mm-hmm. Did you have any like honorable mentions or any other ones that you had thought of that you wanted to bring up?
Well, the other interesting one from Lost would have been the introduction of Ben, which is also in season 2, because that set up the whole arc of, is he really Henry Gale who just parachuted the island, or is he actually a leader from the other who's playing us? And that arc went on for a long time, was really interesting, and set up a great character as well. But it still doesn't beat the intro of Desmond.
You're right. Lost did a really good job with introducing characters. Like the introduction of Juliet in season 3 was a similar thing as season 2, where you're like, wait, what's going on? Who is this person? And then come to find out it's a suburb on the island. That was another similar, like, oh my gosh, wow, that's a crazy thing that they did.
They were surprisingly able to do a bunch of different, wait, this is on the island kind of things. Because I think there's that one with the barracks, and now suddenly they see the plane crash. There's the one where the guy has his son, and it's Pierre Chang with baby Miles, and like that's another one, like a construction company, and all of a sudden they're back in the time, and there's Daniel Faraday. It's like they keep getting us to focus. Like, we just like assume all the time this is probably on the island again, but they got us every time.
Haha, suckers! But I'm sure, like, props to the writers, they kept being able to pull off stuff like that, because you're absolutely right. And introducing Ben the way they did, that's like that arc. I wouldn't say the character introduction was so fantastic, but like the kickoff of the arc, I would agree. Like season 2, once Michael left, like it started to drag a little bit until we met Ben.
Yeah,
it was interesting at the beginning, and then a little bit of a drag, and then really picked up towards the end and finished out really strong.
Somewhere, I think it's got to be on YouTube. There's someone made a cut, and it's really interesting of all the different points of view of the plane crashing. You see from the pilot, from the characters on the plane, then you see the others watching it from the barracks. You see like the tailies and the main survivors both crashing simultaneously. You see Desmond's point of view from being in the hatch and accidentally killing Kelvin, and they mix all of these together because this is like the same moment that's been shown in like 5 or 6 episodes across multiple seasons. And it's cool to see how it all fits together.
I did not expect us to talk as much about Lost as we did. So let me throw one more honorable mention your way of a different TV show, see if there's any interest in this. For those Lost fans who are like, no, don't stop talking about it. Sorry, we can't spend the entire. This is a Lost-centric episode. But one character that I really liked, I talked about him a little bit ago when we talked about mentors, was Jack Donaghy from 30 Rock. His introduction first episode as well. He literally kicks a door down to introduce himself. So Liz and Pete have to go upstairs to meet like the new boss, except for they don't realize it's the new boss. They think it's going to be this old boss named Gary. They walk in, it's like, where's Gary? And then Jack kicks in the door because there's a construction crew around, so he's able to do this. He's renovating his office, and he's like, Gary's dead. I'm Jack Donaghy. And like he immediately establishes himself and establishes the whole idea of now NBC has been bought by this parent company like General Electric, who also owns all these other places, and also owns Kmart. And then Pete's like, oh, we're owned by Kmart? And he's like, no, so maybe you should stop dressing like it. And so then they go into his office, and he's just like, he's so clearly important. His secretary comes in. I love this. His secretary has like these 3 cards, but we don't see what's on the cards. He's just like, set up a tea time at 4, blah, blah, blah. And then the final one is, tell her 5 inches, but it's thick. And then he walks away. It's just, and then like he starts talking about how he got to this big level. He's like, I invented this. I had this idea for this trifecta oven. It has microwave capabilities and outside heat. Like the 3 ways that it heats something. He's like, we're able to cook a turkey in 22 minutes. It's just like, this guy is like no nonsense. I'm in charge. And now I also have creative say over your sketch comedy program. Yeah. Like that's a great dynamic to immediately establish. Like you get to know everything about what this guy's about enough to feel what those characters are thinking when they're like, oh, wait, you're in charge now? We have to submit our comedy ideas to you? I don't think this is going to work. And so it immediately sets off the whole series and the idea of it. And he's a great character. It just didn't make my top 3, but it was a good intro.
I haven't watched 30 Rock in probably a good 5 or 6 years. So I've seen that, but I don't remember that scene, but I can definitely picture it in your head. And Alec Baldwin just has that right attitude to be Jack Donaghy there.
Yeah, I mean, he's a softer version of the Coffees for Closers character he plays in Glengarry Ross, and he does such a good job with that specific type of acting. And that's why they put him as Boss Baby, even though Boss Baby sucks. Guys, Boss Baby sucks. Stop supporting it. Stop letting your kids watch it on Netflix. Stop letting them get ratings. Stop going to see it in theaters. Please, let Boss Baby die. For the love of God, let Boss Baby die.
Or if you don't like it, you could just not watch it.
I have kids, and they're like, oh, Boss Baby, I want to watch this. And then they turn it on. I'm worse. And I have to sit there and let it happen to me.
Too bad you're not the adults who could just say, no, we're not watching that.
No, I can't. There's 4 of them and 1 of me.
Yes, but you have Angie on your side, if you do.
No, I don't. She loves Boss Baby. No. She's never around. She's downstairs watching Gilmore Girls.
Well, there you go. Watch that instead.
No, this is terrible. Both of these are awful. Let's move on to trivia. All right. Oh, hey, and I had the trivia one, so I can share it. So last week, I talked about my good buddy Blue from Blue's Clues, and said how one of the picks I almost went with was from a PBS show about a dog that will reenact these classic novels. And do you remember what the name of the dog was?
I never knew it, so I can't remember what I didn't know.
It's That's right. It's Wishbone. What's the story, Wishbone?
I remember that
is
show
the lyrics
now.
of this theme song.
I remember
Yeah,
the
now
show.
you
I never
remember.
saw it, but yeah, I remember Wishbone.
That's okay. I watched it. I liked it. I was a fan. And then so I was like, oh, that would have been a good pick. But I'm like, no, wait. It's just a dog that acts out stories. That's an over dramatic dog. I don't think I actually would want that as a best friend. So
All right. So we're going with my trivia.
we're going with yours because mine would have been, hey, what's the song that's played in Desmond's introduction?
Well, mine is related to that. So yes, the song played during Desmond's introduction is "Make Your Own Kind of Music" by Mama Cass Elliot. Question: there's one other Mama Cass Elliot that plays at some point during Lost. So the question is, what other Mama Cass Elliot song is played and when during Lost?
Oh, that one scene with that one song.
Yep, it's the scene with the character or characters who are doing actions or not doing actions, and there's music in the background.
I prefer not doing actions. They're just sitting there and the song's playing and they're staring at each other.
Who wouldn't sitting and staring be an action?
Nope. It's void of action. All right. Well, you guys decide. We have talked a good amount. Next week, we are going to talk about How I Met Your Mother. So if you are a How I Met Your Mother fan, we bring this show up enough, but we're going to have an episode dedicated directly to it. We're going to talk about some running gags of How I Met Your Mother. So what are some of your favorite running gags in there? They do a really good job of those running gags, and they do a worse job of the walking gags, and they do a really bad job at the sitting gags, but the running gags are pretty good. So,
and as an added bonus, we were able to secure Bob Saget to come in and record our intro because you all know that in 30 years in the future, you don't sound like yourself. You sound like Bob Saget.
That's true. Fun fact, I have the same birthday as Bob Saget.
Huh, interesting.
And we have the same birthday as Bill Paxton. So there you go.
I have the same birthday as two of the stars of the Big Bang Theory.
Oh, that's not nearly as cool. Bill Paxton is awesome.
I also have the same birthday as Kirsten Dunst from the original Spider-Man.
She's from and you mean from the original Jumanji?
That too.
That too. All right. Well, we need to get out of here. Until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.